Hey everyone, welcome back to Cool's Book Reviews. This week we are checking out Cracking the Billy the Kid Imposter Hoax of Brushy Bill Roberts, written by Gale Cooper. Now I originally picked this one because we were doing that whole Brushy Bill kind of week last week. Unfortunately, I was a little behind reading this one and I'm still kind of getting over a cold, so I do apologize. But that's why this one was a bit delayed as far as getting reviewed and released onto the channel. Also, this one's a bit bigger than our normal 1 week book review, so it just took me a tad bit longer. But before we get into the book itself, let's just take a look at the cover. Up top we see cracking, or at least the word cracking, as well as the word itself is actually cracking, the Billy the Kid Imposter Hoax of Brushy Bill Roberts. And then right here we see Brushy Bill himself, as well as Billy the Kid here, based off of the famous tintype. Below we have the author, Gale Cooper. And then the side we just have the title, Cracking the Billy the Kid Imposter Hoax of Brushy Bill Roberts by Gale Cooper. And then on the back we just got some people kind of describing their feelings on the whole situation. You know, we see Fulton here, we see Oscar Garrett, and Leon Metz. Below we see Gale Cooper, a Harvard Medical School educated MD forensic psychiatrist, has written multiple Billy the Kid books. This is the first one I've read of Gale's, though I do have a couple more on the shelf that we'll get to. And below, as usual, is that ISBN. So this book clocks in at 744 pages, though with the bibliography and annotations and stuff, it starts getting closer to 900 pages. So it is definitely bigger than the usual books we've picked. Throughout, you see a lot of writing, obviously, but at the same time, there are pictures and different documents pertaining to whatever is going on within the book itself. A lot of these do have to do with like different letters or core documents, but they are still interesting to see. You get some floor plans as well, which also helps like if you aren't fully aware of like the whole layout of the Maxwell house. But right here we got the coroner's jury report. There's also some letters from Billy as well as Brushy Bill, so you can at least compare their handwriting. I'm no handwriting expert or anything like that, but to me it definitely looks like two different writings, and we can definitely get to that later on in our discussion. So this book is anti-Brushy Bill as Billy the Kid. It gives a lot of good reasons. Obviously there's a lot of pages in there, so hopefully there's some good reasons, right? But just compare that to like Billy the Kid, an autobiography, which we've done previously on the channel, which was pro Brushy Bill, and you can definitely see the difference in size there. So if it's going off of how much content is related to one and not the other, then definitely anti-Brushy Bill as Billy would win out there. Personally, to me, I have not thought Brushy Bill was Billy the Kid since I was pretty young. I just think as I got older, looking at the pictures, once you definitely dive into the story, and nothing against Billy the Kid, an autobiography by Daniel Edwards, but once you read Brushy's story, it just seems like it's so fantastical. It's really hard to believe that one person did that, that it's even true. There's so many things going on in a year, and then like I said, I just don't think Brushy looks anything like the picture we have of Billy the Kid. His chin is just too compact, where Billy's kind of had that longer, like, square jaw almost, and he looked far too young. He definitely looked closer to the age of 70 compared to saying he was 90. So I think the big question going into this is, did it strengthen my belief that Brushy was not Billy the Kid? And I would say yeah. I mean, there's a ton of things in here stating different facts or contradictions with Brushy. And at the same time, if you believe Brushy is Billy, it could go either way. You know, it's going to be hard if you're kind of set in stone for an idea. Personally, for me, it's hard to believe the story of Brushy Bill as Billy the Kid. I definitely think Billy died in Fort Sumner, though perhaps how the actual killing went down, was it changed? We'll never know. I definitely believe it happened at Maxwell's. Was it in Pete's room? Was it in Paulita's? I'm not sure. But it definitely happened there. There's too many people that were there between Garrett and Poe and everybody. And then, as well as too many people that saw the body for me to just think it's not Billy the Kid. Now, in this book, it definitely goes over a lot of the contradictions from what Brushy originally said and maybe some coaching by Morrison versus, I think, how we hear what Brushy said today, which is definitely different. I've read a couple different books, though I have actually not read Alias Billy the Kid, but I've read some of the newer books written on Brushy Bill Roberts, and compared to the excerpts and some of just the dialogue that Brushy had originally said, it definitely has been altered, perhaps to fix his mistakes. One of the big holes, too, is like his name. We see it William Henry Roberts stay on the headstone. If you kept up with our channel last week, you would have seen that short. But at the same time, that's not the original headstone. If you do some research, Google it, you'll actually find the original Ollie Roberts headstone with a completely different date. Mr. Roberts, we saw, completely change his birth dates a few different times. Though I don't know if there's any record that he actually tried to claim Social Security. It just coincided at the same time that the Social Security got enacted. Another thing you hear often is like Brushy was like really just like secluded, not really talking about who he was, and just really minding his own business. Something that I think we've seen portrayed in like the movie Old Henry, which honestly, if you were a famous outlaw that were to get away, you probably would just go live off the land and not really talk to anybody, not make a big deal of it. But if you're familiar with Brushy and you at least know about J. Frank Dalton, you know that he was coming out before that. You know, this book talks about that he claimed to be Frank James. That's something that I didn't know, though I did know at least he had claimed to be part of the James gang, especially in that famous photograph of him with J. Frank Dalton on Dalton's birthday in the hospital bed, where it says he was a member of the gang. And then there's another picture from earlier, I think it's 47, where it shows the two of them standing next to each other and they're gunslingers. And so right off the bat, he clearly had made more public appearances than I think he let on, or at least what we've been kind of privy to know. Newer books kind of show that he was just like this loner and stuff, but there's a story in here of Miss Weathers here, who, as you can see, was born in 1935 in Hamilton County, Texas, and graduated high school in 1952. Now, this comes from her childhood days, which you would think is before 1950. She graduated in 1952, and Brushy died in 1950. This definitely comes from a time frame where I think a lot of people think Brushy was kind of just hanging out, not telling people who he was. But this is a quote from Weathers. "I don't know anything about the validity of Brushy Bill's claims to his being Billy the Kid. I do remember that he was a wiry little man whom I thought was crazy. Mother and I would do everything we could do to avoid being trapped by Brushy Bill as we knew him. In retrospect, I would now classify his behavior as a form of dementia. We did not believe most of his claims and do not like to be the audience for his rantings and ravings. We pitied the poor souls whom he did trap. Roberts would trap people between himself and one of the light posts around the square. Once someone was trapped, Brushy Bill would begin his tirade about being Billy the Kid, displaying small wrists and explaining how he once looked out a pair of handcuffs to escape." So that story I found interesting because, to me at least, it's kind of portrayed as a story that happened definitely before 1950 and definitely before Morrison had come and found Brushy Bill, who was, you know, trying to do everything in his powers to not show who he was. And so that definitely contradicts that part. And I think that's the biggest thing about Brushy Bill, outside of the story, which it just seems super fantastical. Like, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the movie Forrest Gump, but even the adventures Forrest goes on would pale in comparison to Brushy. I mean, it's just like, in a couple of years, he's done so many things. And I like in one part, it talks about how he just like took a leave of absence from the Horse Thief Association for 2 years. Somehow he was still getting paychecks even though he hadn't shown up for work in 2 years. And when he came back, they just like welcomed him back. And so right there, you're like, wait a minute. Another thing with Brushy is just like, you can follow Ollie Roberts in the census records, and then there's like no census records for William Henry Roberts. His own family have come out and said no, he definitely wasn't Billy the Kid. And there's been a book published. I hope to review that one as well on the channel. And then forgetting names, like how do you forget Pat Garrett? How do you forget the guy that was hunting you down, killed a couple of your buddies, and then has supposedly killed you. In some of the stories, we see how Billy and Pat Garrett were friends, even though it doesn't make sense if they're still trying to kill him. You know, Brushy said he took a bullet to the face, lost a tooth, also took one to the ribs, and one like grazed the skin off of his head. Which to me, I also don't see any of those depicted in the photos we have of him. There was quite a bit of photos later in his life, just because he was going around. We see him in even Fort Sumner in front of the Billy the Kid, grave and stuff like that. It also contains portions that talk about like the 9th Cavalry Regiment, and Brushy refers to them in definitely not nice terms, and this definitely contradicts kind of what the image that we have of Billy, where Billy at least is described by locals as like open and really accepting of other traditions and just being very kind and gentlemanly. And then you see like Brushy and just like definitely some racist slurs, and it just doesn't add up. And just different events. He said he didn't kill either of the guards, be it Ollinger or Bell, when he escaped Lincoln, which, I mean, obviously Billy the Kid had to. Now, some people say he didn't want to get in trouble. He's going for a pardon of just Brady, why confess to murder. But at the same time, everyone knows it happened. If they really thought it was Billy the Kid, they could have, captured him there, right? I don't think Brushy Bill was Billy the Kid. Now, I've been to Hamilton. I've been to Heiko. They've been extremely nice to us, and so I still say you should go check it out. It's still part of history. What do I rate this book? I mean, that's kind of hard. I think, first off, the size is going to kind of scare some people away from reading it. Obviously, a ton of work has been done for it, but if somebody was going to pick up A or B, they're probably going to pick up A just because it's shorter, and so all this information doesn't get out. So the length is definitely perhaps a hindrance to a wider range of audience. But at the same time, I do think if you're looking for a book to really kind of be a good starting point and perhaps end point for anything you need to talk about for Brushy Bill, it's probably a good book to pick up. There's a lot of good resources, being at letters, floor plans, layouts, books, even some movies that I think definitely could come in handy. So if you even just take some more research away, I think it's really good. At times, could people maybe see it a bit mean-spirited as far as like the description of Brushy? Yeah, I could see that, or just some of the other people. It's possible. So overall, I would probably have to rank this about a 7 out of 10. It's really good, has a lot of good detail. Gale obviously put a lot of work into this and digging up a lot of good information. So like I said, it's a valued research piece. But if you want to see more Cool's book reviews, click that link to your left. If you want to see more about what we're doing here at Cool's Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know. Have you read Cracking the Billy the Kid Imposter Hoax of Brushy Bill Roberts? And either way, do you think Brushy Bill was Billy the Kid?